My name is Doug House. I work for Porsche Cars North America. I'm the manager for technical support. We entered the AR/VR game a couple of years ago, but we entered it in a kind of a unique place in that we entered it in the technical support world that I live in and have lived in for about 35 years. So to give you a brief introduction before I start my presentation, I brought a video along that we did to kind of introduce this to the media.
The use of smart glasses has allowed us to see a 40% improvement in resolution time for tickets that submitted to us for technical support use. So the Porsche technicians in the US have commonly been referred to as the fighter pilots of the industry. We have the best technicians in the world in our dealers. We still have to give them the latest technology because it changes literally overnight.
With these glasses, you can get me pointed in the right direction. We can get this car repaired.
I'm going to go ahead and give you a call on the glasses. Let's get that set up, and I'll see you there.
So one of the new technologies that we're releasing at Porsche Cars North America is called Tech Live Look. Through the use of smart glass technology, we're able to see what the technician sees live, regardless of where the technician is.
One of the issues I'm running into is actually locating the location of the sensor itself.
So looking in GFF, it's kind of the left front right there, and it looks like it's this sensor. Let me highlight it for you.
Okay.
Right there. You see it on your glasses?
So right here.
All right. Okay, let's take it apart and see what it looks like. I'm going to send you a couple pictures real quick of the connector, and we'll take it apart and see if we can see anything wrong with it.
John, you can confirm this is pin 3 here, correct?
We're looking for the yellow wire. Crimps over the insulation.
All right, so there we go.
So that's a brief introduction to what we've been doing for about 2 years. This has been a complete cooperation between two different departments for us at Porsche Cars North America, in that this was in our innovation space as well as technical support. And we first started on this journey in June of 2016 when we attended the Enterprise Wearables Technology Conference in Atlanta, Georgia. Some of you probably were there. We attended that conference, and at that time, really for me, being an old car guy from all the way back into the early 80s, there was some new technology for me as I was introduced to the smart glasses. Originally, as we began to look at this, we weren't sure if there was a fit for us in Porsche Cars North America until we spent some time with the glasses and looking at some of the back-end software and what we could do. And we realized that there was a technical support element to this and that we could see what the technician sees in real time. It's great to have an idea, but you've got to go talk to your people. There's about 20 people on my team, 8 in Atlanta and 12 in the field, so it's sometimes hard to get my group together. We went back, had a meeting with our group, and this is where we began to kind of define what our needs were. To some degree, we didn't know what they were, right? We saw the possibility of some technology that could help us. The technical support world in the automotive sector is, believe it or not, competitive. There are surveys that are done. We're surveyed all the time, just like you as customers are surveyed. They survey us all the time. And to be perfectly honest with you, in 2016, we weren't very good. So we were looking at anything we could do to improve. I was new in the position, had been in the field for about 15 years, and so I knew what some of our needs were and I knew what some of our dealers thought of us. So we came back and began to talk about this, and one of the things that the guys that sit on the technical support hotline that take phone calls and tickets all day long from technicians in the dealer, one of the things he said to me is he said, the hardest part about this job is I can never see what he's talking about. All I have is his written word. Well, if you've communicated in writing with some technicians, even some of the best technicians in the world, sometimes their writing skills aren't the top level. So we began to kind of narrow down and look at what our problem was. Could we take this a step further? That's when we went into kind of exploring what the opportunities were. We had to look at a software company. We weren't in this space, as Heather would say if she was here. This was new to us. So we began looking, and we first talked to several software providers, finally settled on Atheer. We brought Atheer in, began to work with them and learn a little bit about their system. Then hardware, we also had to do some exploring. We used several different types of hardware in the initial phase. So we decided that we wanted to go ahead and reach out to our dealers and go through what we called kind of a proof of concept. So we just went small. We have 190 dealers. We went to 3 dealers. We chose dealers deep in the south in Miami, Atlanta, because that's right in our backyard. And then we went to the west coast to Stevens Creek out in the San Francisco area. We started with small in a pilot phase because, again, we had a lot to learn and we knew that. We didn't, the old saying goes, we didn't know what we didn't know. We learned right away that the Wi-Fi infrastructure in our dealers was really, really good on the showroom floor. And it was really, really bad at the technician's work bay. And so that was our first challenge. But we learned that early on in the concept phase, in the proof of concept phase. And so we began to work on that. And that taught us right away when we asked dealers about their Wi-Fi and they said, oh yeah, we have great Wi-Fi. We learned right away that that meant they had great Wi-Fi at the front door and on the showroom floor, but probably not in the shop. And so we began to look at that and we were able to start a process to improve that before we got further into the rollout, which we'll talk about in just a minute. We also didn't want to settle, we didn't want to be our choice on hardware. So we brought in different brands of hardware and we took these initial 3 dealers and we split the hardware amongst the 3 of them and said, you try it for a few weeks, you try this hardware for a few weeks, you try this hardware for a few weeks, and you try this hardware for a few weeks. And then we rotated around between those 3 dealers. We got a lot of really interesting feedback. But the one thing that came back to us over and over from the technicians was the more they were hands-free, the better they liked it. They didn't want their hands tied up with anything. They didn't even, as I stand here and hold this remote, they didn't even want to have their hands on a remote. They're technicians, they get paid to fix cars. And so that was a learning point we took very early on. The proof of concept proved a lot of things, and one of the things it proved is it proved me wrong in one point. I believed that when we took technicians that were my age and we put headsets on them and we started communicating with them and we started sending them documents back and forth in their field of vision and we started drawing circles on the and pointing and giving them instructions in their glasses in a kind of a heads-up display, I thought we would lose the older guys for sure. I wasn't worried about the younger guys that grew up on computers. I was more concerned about the guys my age, that this was a little bit new. Some of these guys struggle with our system testers. But I was wrong. I'm actually very happy to report that I was completely wrong. The older guys, the older generation took to it extremely well, and so in the proof of concept phase, we had tremendous success. Our shop foreman down in Miami at the time found features and stuff of the glasses that we hadn't uncovered yet. He found other use cases for them, and we were able to look through the proof of concept, gave us all kinds of data to go back to our executive committee, and we expanded our pilot out of those 3 into 9. This gave us a lot more information coming from the 9 dealers, and in more cases, obviously, and more chances and more people involved. And we again took our hardware and rotated it between these 9 dealers. This gave us more dealers, more technicians, more service managers, more people involved to help us with the hardware. On the back end, on the software side, we stayed with Atheer through the process and are still with them today. So a little bit about our process and what we learned is, you'll see here, almost every industry, I'm sure, that's in this room, you're regulated. We're no different. In the technical support world, we refer to it as the TREAD Act. This is when the government got involved after the Firestone and Ford controversy in the late 90s. And so our information that comes from our dealers has to be in the form of a ticket so that it can be tracked. Today, before Tech Live Look, we got a ticket. We had to read through the ticket. Everything had to be documented electronically, still does. We respond to that. After we do that, then we're allowed to get involved in a more phone conversation. Then we can share some information in phone. But the problem is, it's still only as good as what the technician tells us. Just an unfortunate fact of technical support in the automotive world. Then we try a diagnosis, and we wait for the information to come back. Does it work? Does it not work? I know this will sound a little strange, but sometimes we get conflicting answers. The customer tells us it didn't work. The technician tells us it did. The technician tells us it didn't work. The service manager tells us it does. So even all the way down here at the solution, sometimes we don't know. So during our pilot phase, both in the 3-dealer pilot phase, proof of concept, and then the 9-dealer phase, we went to a little bit different situation where we went with the ticket comes in, it's documented. This keeps us compliant with the TREAD laws. We can read the ticket. We can respond, or we don't have to respond. We can go right straight to the glasses technology, and then we can document that conversation later. What we found in both of our proof of concept and in our pilot phase, that this saved us about 40%. Up to 40%, we saw a decrease in the resolution time. Today, I can tell you that we're rolled out much further. We're much further along, and our calls are lasting, the longest calls are about 13 minutes. So we're in that window somewhere of 6 to 13 minutes for resolution, because our experts can see, and we can see what the technician is talking about. I'll move on to this slide to give you a little bit of a perspective of where we're at today. Today we are at 50 dealers. We'll be at 55 by the end of this week that are on this program. Something I would stop here and tell you, for Porsche dealers in the United States, this is not mandatory. This is a total volunteer program. It is also an expense to them. They pay for the hardware and they pay for the licensing. We're not subsidizing that in any way through vehicle sales or vehicle distribution. It's a total expense to the dealer. So when you have 190 dealers, basically by the end of the year, we're going to be right at 50% or maybe a little bit more of our dealers will be using this technology. It's been embraced by our dealer body. It's been embraced by our technicians. Some people have asked me, how do the technicians like having this on their head? Our calls are going 13 minutes. It doesn't bother them. If you were talking about them having to wear them 8 hours a day or something like that, I think we would have a different conversation. But if we're getting that information and getting back to them in that short amount of time, then there's really no issue with them having the glasses on for 13 minutes. It doesn't bother them at all. We have seen a lot of different cases, but one of the things that's been a little bit interesting is some of the human error that we've been able to find that we didn't know really existed was not something we had really anticipated finding. Simple things of measurements. Simple things of seeing a part that was repaired previously that the technician didn't notice. He didn't know the part didn't come that way. So some simple technician error. So again, this is a complete volunteer program for our dealers. We've got 18 more scheduled for this fall. We're going to get most of them on this month. We've got 20 more that are right behind them, basically have said, yeah, we're in. We're basically in the phase where we're waiting for their paperwork. So at this point, we feel very confident about the acceptance from our dealers. For me, being an old technician myself, the acceptance from the technician body has been more important to me. If the technicians will use it, and it will help them, and it helps customers, and we can get cars in and out of the dealer network quicker, then we can deal with the dealer's reluctance based on cost factors later. That's easy to overcome. It's the acceptance of the technician that I was concerned with, and we have not seen any of that to this point. Some things that we have been working on with our software provider, the internationalization of the software is complete. That's in place. Also, over-the-air updates complete. This has been a big hit for us because the glasses update right over the air, and they don't have to plug them in. They don't have to do anything. It just update them, and so they love this. One of the things that we've also been able to find some success with, the glasses have a built-in LED light. Particular ones that we're using, I'll talk about them in a minute. And we were able to get a change implemented where we can use that light and use the camera at the same time. This is another step in getting the technician hands-free, because now he's looking at something maybe in a dark space of the car. We can activate the LED light so he remains hands-free. He's not holding a flashlight trying to help us. Group calling, this is a big one for us that we are eagerly awaiting from Atheer in Q4. And I mentioned to you that we have 8 of the team is in Atlanta. 12 of them are in the field. When I say they're in the field, they're from New York to California, from Chicago to Dallas. And we got 12 of those guys out there. And there are sometimes we want to have more than one of those experts look at a particular problem. So by allowing us to have group calling, to have 2 or maybe 3 of our experts call into a pair of glasses is really a powerful tool. So we're looking forward to this one. Now you can see voice and gesture, borescope integration. This will be a big one for us as well. Live annotation next year, and object detection next year. We're looking forward to all of those, but especially group calling and borescope. As I said earlier, our software partner Atheer, I think if you look downstairs, you'll see them. They're here today. And also then our choice of hardware was ODG. And when I say our choice, it really came down to the fact that this was the technicians. This was the feedback we got from them, plain and simple. They had choices, we gave them choices. And they settled on ODG. So I think for the most part, I'm running pretty close on time, and I wanted to leave a few moments if there's any questions to see if I can answer them. I went through about 2 years of this program in just a few minutes, and it's a little hard. To give you some perspective, when I gave this presentation to our dealers, it was 2 hours. So